And the thing that I really want to highlight is what my experience really showed me is while being employed is good and while getting your VA benefit, like those are good things. They should not be the foundational concepts or the primary focuses of somebody's transition.
Hey everybody, it is Jordy from Seven Eagle Group. I've been working in this industry for 10 years, and one of the most impressive things to me about the military community, of which I did not serve, but I work with these guys every day, is when I come across people who are just dedicating their lives to helping their military brothers and sisters. And I came across this guy a couple weeks ago. We met, and I was immediately impressed with the incredible work that he is doing, especially because it is such a labor of love for him. And uh, anyway, spent 5.5 years in the Air Force as an instructor in cyber warfare training, led teams of 25 airmen. Got out, started working in cyber. Is now a consultant with Amazon. And in his free time, I guess, whatever he has there, he decided he's going to start a podcast, which I love the name of this, the Military Playbook. And when I learned about it and watched some episodes, I said, man, what can we do here at Seven Eagle to help spread the word and get more people to listen to this show? Because it is absolutely incredible, the stuff that that the information that he's providing to this community about transitioning and advice and mentorship. And we're going to get into that all today. So out of Sacramento, California, Billy Pugh.
What's up, Jordy? Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for the awesome introduction. It's more than I deserve.
Hey.
And the funny thing about I don't know if this was a poor choice on my part, but I don't know. I haven't decided yet from a marketing perspective. So I have a YouTube channel, and it's called the Military Playbook. And within the Military Playbook is the Military Podcast. And it's funny because I haven't done a good job of delineating those brands. I have both of the names because my plan, and for anyone who listens to this, if you're interested, pay attention to the YouTube channel, because the podcast goes out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, and it's really designed to be the emotional and mental side of the game when it comes to basically shifting your entire identity out of the military and into whatever you decide to do next. Um, I named the podcast and the YouTube channel two different things because very soon I will be releasing a very long set of videos that my brother-in-law put together, that is a lot more mechanics based on how can someone research their way from an infinite number of opportunities that somebody is presented with when they get out of the military, and then narrow down all of those infinite opportunities to one or two really actionable strategies. And we came up with that because neither of us really, there's not really we in the military, we like frameworks, we like structure. And when you're getting out of the military, this is the first time you really don't have a lot of structure. And that's where organizations like Seventh Eagle Group are so awesome, because you come alongside veterans and help them with the next step when it comes to employment. And we wanted to create something that was a mental framework for a veteran so that they could self-evaluate, begin to narrow down options, and hopefully find what their next step is. And we segment it into a lot of different pieces, and then we give strategies on how people can find avenues and access into jobs in part of this whole course. And part of that is identifying unique avenues to jobs that people don't normally have, which Seventh Eagle Group is one of those things. And yeah, hopefully teaching people how to fish so that they can find amazing resources like the ones that you're providing, so that they can have access to these jobs that they're very deserving of once they transition out of the military and into the next chapter of their life. So really long-winded explanation and why there's the post-military playbook and the post-military podcast. But that is that's I just wanted to that was the first thing I want to talk about. So
So I want to dig into a little bit about what motivating you to do this, and we're going to talk about some of the lessons you've learned along the way. But first, before we get into that, what somebody who wants to download or listen to the podcast, what do you say they should go to Apple or go to Spotify, or what's
so my recommendation would be go to YouTube, search the post-military playbook, and first subscribe. That would be super helpful for me. And then from there, all of the links to the podcast and all of my social media are on that YouTube channel. And the reason why I say that people should go there first is because content that I have planned outside of the podcast is that's going to be the centralized location for everything that I'm going to be putting out. If you want to go listen to Spotify or listen to Apple Podcasts because you don't have YouTube Premium and you don't want to keep your screen open, which I totally get, definitely go there. Definitely give everything a listen there. However, my centralized place where if you want to see every piece of content that I ever put out, YouTube's going to be the place to go.
Perfect. All right. I want to start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? What brought you down this path of serving in the Air Force? What was that?
So I'm first generation military. I was born in Ohio. My family moved around quite a bit, and I just due to my father's work, I had nothing. It's funny because people assume that like my parents were in the military, so we moved a lot, which was not the case. And when I was a senior in high school, I really just wanted to get free college. I did not want to pay for it. And I applied to the United States Air Force Academy kind of on a whim. Like it just seemed interesting. My family used to vacation in Colorado Springs and Fort Collins quite a bit when I was growing up. So I love the mountains. And there was a free school in Colorado Springs that said you could just show up and they'll pay for college. I was like, that sounds neat. And so I showed up, and I was very lucky that that is how I approached it, because freshman year at the Air Force Academy is not fun. It is very difficult. And had I done any kind of serious research into what it was, I probably wouldn't have shown up. Yeah, I wouldn't have gone. And once I signed up, initially I didn't know that you could quit in basic training. Like I just kind of assumed like I'd made a horrible life decision and I just signed myself away to the government. But then I found out that you could quit. But then I don't know. I never wanted to go back to my family and my friends and have to explain why I wasn't there anymore. So my first 2 years of the academy, I was very much so still trying to find my identity. I was young, getting out of high school. I didn't really have like a lot of guiding principles, and I really found those at the end of my sophomore year at the Air Force Academy. And I really started embracing this identity of service, of being able to care for people as an officer in these organizations, being able to make people's lives better through my actions. And so I really bought into this military identity going into my junior year at school. And I studied history while I was there, specifically unconventional warfare. That's what my degree is in. And I realized very quickly that cybersecurity and cyber warfare was it was the way that wars were being fought. It's the best way that a singular human can affect things on a global scale. And I mean, you see that with social media, with information warfare. You see that with different kinds of hacks that have gone on. And so I thought that all that was really cool. So I commissioned as a cyber warfare officer in 2016. And after that, I did 2 first line supervisor roles. It's not really important what I did, because the next iteration, I would say, of my identity development was my second halfway through my second year in service. I was a first lieutenant. I got transferred to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, to be an instructor at the undergraduate cyber warfare training schoolhouse, where any new officer that's going into cyber warfare, we would teach them everything that they need to know to not sound stupid when they go lead people in a variety of different cyber units. And it was the school that I had gone through 2 years ago to learn what I needed to learn, because I was a history major, so I didn't know anything about cyber or IT. And I remember telling one of my friends right when we graduated that I would rather die than come back to Keesler Air Force Base. And so I didn't die, and I ended up being an instructor 2 years later. And really, that was, again, the next real step in my development and identity, where I was able to really pour into people's lives in a very unique way as a teacher, and as a developer of character, almost, because you would have, I mean, I remembered being a second lieutenant. You graduate training, you go to your first unit, you don't know what you're doing. Like you make zero smart decisions when you're a second lieutenant, because you just don't know what's happening. And so I was able to give some kind of advice, some kind of guidance to these students, and I really loved that. And I did that for 3 years. And then my wife deployed in 2021, and going into, or sorry, she deployed at the end of 2020, and going into 2021, January of 2021, we were set to PCS to Lake and Heath Air Force Base, which is in the United Kingdom. We were really stoked about that. And then in January of 2021, I had a stroke while getting ready to go to the gym.
Oh, God.
I think on like the 26th. And this is a shorter podcast, so I'll save you all those gory details. But the fact of the matter is that immediately rerouted my life into a path that I did not expect or plan for. And at that point, I would tell you that my identity was really firmly rooted in two things: my physical fitness. I'm a big guy. People who watch me on YouTube don't know, like, you wouldn't know because I sit down all the time. I'm 6'4" and I weigh 250 pounds. Like, I'm a big dude, and I like to lift. I like to work out quite a bit. So I identify very strongly with those characteristics, and I was 1000% bought into my military identity at that point. Like, from my time at the academy, from the 5 years at that point that I had served as an officer, my entire adult life was the military. And if you would have asked me the day before my stroke, I would have told you I'm going to do 20 years at least, and then figure out what happens after that. So I had no thought of ever leaving the service. And so the stroke kicked off a 1-year medical review process, which ended in me being separated from the military. And then, so I left officially January of 2022. And then 3 months later, my wife PCSs to Travis Air Force Base in California. So I was immediately separated from everything that I had known, from like an identity perspective and just from a community perspective. And I was dropped into California, and it was tough, man. I can't begin to tell you how not tight that was, especially after you get on LinkedIn. I did a good job transitioning. At least I thought I did. I got on LinkedIn. I set up a ton of 30-minute calls with people. I ended up talking to like 400 veterans, I think, between when I had my stroke and when I got out. And based off everything that I was hearing on LinkedIn, if I did a good job researching, I got a good job, which I work for Amazon Web Services, which is kind of like, to at the risk of sounding braggadocious, it's kind of the pinnacle of what people want to do when they get out of the military and do in IT. And I'm very lucky to have gotten the job I'm in. But I got it. And then I got the money that everyone says that we're supposed to be getting. And I got my VA benefits squared away. I was very lucky for that. And so according to what everyone was telling me online, like transition success, like I did it. And then I was checking myself into VA mental health 3 months after I get out of the military in California because I was just ludicrously depressed. And I had to figure out why that was. And it, at that point, I had to start really digging into the fact that my identity was so fundamentally rooted in the military that I was in no way capable of moving on in my life because it was the foundational thing. It was literally the foundational concept of who I was. And so there's no way that I can build the next chat. Like I can't build Billy in the next chapter of my life because I have no foundation to build upon. And so I started the podcast and I started the YouTube channel to really let people know, to do two things: to let people who haven't done this or who are going through it now know like this shit happens and it's hard. And also to give veterans a chance to validate their struggle. Like people ask, if you're a veteran out there and you made $1 million business, people kick your door down asking how you did it because people love to talk about money, and that's fine. But no one's really asking veterans, hey, like, what was it like leaving? Like, what was it like having to go do the hard work to figure out who you are as a person now? And so the podcast was really my solution to that because no one told me. And so I'm hoping that at least a couple of people listen to my stuff and someone tells them before it punches them in the face.
Yeah. Well, shit, I'm sorry you had to freaking go through that stroke. You're a young guy, man. That must have come like a left hook, huh?
It was something. I'll tell you what. But it's better. It's good now.
Good.
And I've talked a lot, so I want you to ask some questions. I don't want this to just be my 30-minute monologue. So ask some questions, and I can dive into the other stuff later.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. I mean, I'll tell you what I love about you is that you're not only helping guys with men and women with their transition, getting them into the jobs and giving them that advice, but you're also helping them with the mental side too, which I would assume go hand in hand, right? Your head's got to be right if you're gonna get that job that you want. And also I love that too, that it sort of went easy for you in a way, right? You got a great job, you got the money you want, you got your VA benefits, but then you still are coming back and lending a hand to others. So kudos to you.
And the thing that I really want to highlight is what my experience really showed me is while being employed is good and while getting your VA benefit, like those are good things. They should not be the foundational concepts or the primary focuses of somebody's transition. Because I will tell you now, you can have a great 6-figure job where you work from home and you can be very, very, very miserable. Like your employment will never fill the holes that people think that it's going to when they get out of the military. And in my opinion, it's really just because in the military, we view the military as a job, but the military is a lifestyle. It has a lot of pieces wrapped up into it. It's your community, it's your overall purpose because you're serving the nation. And within that large monolith of purpose that is the military, somewhere in there is also a job. And what people think, because we're just not trained to think about this, and frankly, like, why would you really take the time to think about this? Life moves fast, and being like building self-awareness is hard. People don't take the time to realize, like, it's not like my job when I was an instructor there were aspects to my job that certainly provided me purpose. I love to teach. I love to provide people with information to hopefully set themselves up for something better in their life. But my job primarily had a lot of purpose because I was doing it in the military.
Right.
Being a teacher somewhere else doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to experience the same level of purpose as when I did it in the military. Another good example is being in the Air Force is like, if you're flying cargo in the military and then you go do it for FedEx, that's just not the same thing.
Right.
Like, and so people in the military, we're not trained to then go find our own purpose so that you can happily fly for FedEx.
Right. You'll never get that, but right.
You'll like, because FedEx isn't, it's not supposed to. Like, you're not supposed to get your right. purpose and driving force in life from flying boxes for FedEx. Right. You get it from something else, but in the military, it's all nicely connected and packaged. Yeah. And so then people set themselves up for failure because they assume that every job is like that. And it's just not. And so, yeah, that I think the benefit for me in the way, because it was so easy, it really revealed that disconnect in thinking that I had for myself. And that's why that's why I feel very lucky to have gone through it in the way that I did.
And I assume doing the post-military playbook is sort of scratching that itch for you a lot too, where you feel a part of that tribe again. And you're serving.
It is. Yeah, because my job certainly is not, and that's not a knock on my job. I love my job, but again, and I'll keep hammering this, like, my job does not need to fill that hole in my soul that is my overall purpose in life. Like, it's a means by which I can provide sustenance for myself and my family, and I can seek out fulfillment and purpose in a variety of ways. And it does not have to be for my job. And I would argue it shouldn't be. Like, your job shouldn't be the foundational purpose provider for anybody. But that is
your work. It could be any number of things.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's awesome. Let's dive in now to the actual podcast. I know you've done dozens of these shows, right? And I mean, talk a little bit about what people expect if they come to listen. Talk about maybe the guests you've had on that have been really interesting. The topics that you guys get into.
So I've recorded somewhere in the mid 30s, I think, of episodes. Officially, we've released 27, I believe. We're somewhere around there. 27. I think the 27th episode actually comes out this week. But no, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on that. But if you go check it out on YouTube, you can find out. What I do with the post-military podcast is I talk to veterans, and we really cover that very specific transition point in their life. What did they do in the military? Why did they get out? How do they prepare to get out? And then what was it like for them what was it like? What's their post-military life like after that? And the primary focus for all of these episodes is, what was it like dealing with that identity shift? We certainly get into some mechanics of like what was beneficial for you finding jobs or finding employment or education or whatever they encountered in their journey. But the vast majority of the conversation is that mental and emotional battle that comes with, like, everyone will have this. If you're listening to this, you're not out of the military and you don't think that's the case, I'm telling you right now that you will. But most people in the military, if you do hear this and don't believe me, it's okay, because I wouldn't have believed me until it happened. And so, and every one of my guests echo the exact same thing. Like, people just have to, you kind of have to face it as it comes, but I'm trying to at least put out some kind of like public service announcement so people at least know that what's happening to you is common and it's just a phase. Right. It's not forever permanent and you're the only one who feels this way, because I think a lot of veterans do feel that way. And in terms of like that's what we talk about. And in terms of guests, I've had a whole range of people on the show. I had a guy who tested parachutes for the Air Force and now owns a bison farm. That's a recent episode. That's a really, really cool one. I had a doctor who transitioned out and now he manages hospitals in Northern California and had to lead like thousands of people through COVID, which was crazy. All sorts of different folks. And well, the reason why I don't want to say I don't really have a favorite guest because my goal by providing so many different viewpoints is to say that this is a common problem
Yeah.
that everyone goes through. And that's not trying to say like everyone's weak. It's just this is a big deal. And you as a listener should not feel bad for
Right.
going through this because it's a very common problem.
Yeah.
And just because and everyone can also get through it. Just because you weren't special forces or didn't do some super high level stuff in the military does not mean you are incapable of solving this problem yourself. Like everyone is very capable of doing it. You just have to do some work to do it. And that's the goal of how I source my guests. And yeah, that's what people can expect when they get on the show.
I love it because you're allowing people to be vulnerable, to talk about these
Mhm.
difficult subjects and making them feel like it's okay and there's help
Yeah.
for you. And so they're not going through it alone, which we all know the wheels fall off when people in every aspect of their life when they feel like they're alone and depressed.
Yeah.
So kudos to you, man. What an incredible service you're providing to this community. Seven Eagle Group will always be here to support that and help you get the word out.
I appreciate that.
We can get more people listening to this incredible advice. Lastly, if you want to check out Billy's podcast, go to Spotify, go to YouTube, go to Apple Podcasts, just search for post-military playbook podcast. Sorry.
Yep.
Post-military podcast, and you'll find it. Check it out. Give it a listen. I'm sure you'll love it the way I did. And listen, thank you so much, man. Keep cranking. Keep doing this great work for the community.
I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Thanks for having me on, Jordy.
Yeah.